All right, so basically, this is going to be one of the live talks for the Black and Super program for this year's Black History Month. We have with us Nix of the podcast Do You Speak Geek, and we're going to talk a bit about comics tonight. Also joining me, I don't know if I said it, I'm Corey from the Suffolk Public Library. Joining me is Matt, also the Suffolk Public Library. How are you doing today, Nix?
I'm doing pretty good. Interesting day at work today, but other than that, I am here to talk about the one thing I love almost as much as my own children, and that is comics.
Cool.
Almost as much. Almost as much. Before I get started, I just want to say thanks to Suffolk Public Library. Shout out to Corey for even thinking of me to participate in this. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be a part of something bigger than myself. And just a little background on me. My name is Nix. I am the podcaster, content creator, YouTuber, and all that jazz when it comes to the brand known as Do You Speak Geek. Next month, Do You Speak Geek will be 3 years old, still a baby, but we'll be 3 years old next month. Of course, we're going to be celebrating the way we always do. We'll have several interviews, new content launching, and of course, we'll do a giveaway at some point. So if you guys follow my socials, check those out, especially on Instagram at Do You Speak Geek. Check that out when you get a chance, so you can be aware of what's going on and when things are going down. And yeah, it's gonna be a fun time. The giveaway will definitely be my own merchandise that you see me wearing now, the Speak Geek merchandise. And yeah, it's gonna be a fun time next month. I always go really, really hard, and then at some point during April, I'll sleep a little bit. Then we'll re-up and do how we normally do. The podcast is every single week. Every week I drop some sort of a comic book on Wednesday. That's called Source Wall Wednesday, where I feature a comic that was released that week. Just a little recommendation to everybody. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, if you follow all my platforms, doyouspeakgeek.com, central hub for everything as far as Do You Speak Geek, and you can catch up with us there and see what we have going on. We always announce when we're going to cons, things of that nature, so it's always a fun, good time. But let's talk about what we want to talk about tonight. So, you want to read comics? Okay, cool. Uh, Whether it's a movie from the MCU or a show on CW or even a podcast, comic book centered media is all around us for our entertainment. Comic books have been around for a very, very long time, all the way back to the 1800s, even. From the funny pages in your local newspaper to the issues you know of and love today, there's always been some sort of comic strip or book around for your enjoyment. And for the most part, these books deliver some of the most captivating stories with deep, complex, and sometimes larger than life characters who stick with readers well after the final page is turned. I know for me, I was hooked when I first saw a man in blue spandex and a red cape fly for the first time. I was like, whoa, what is this? He can fly. And it just amazed me to see other characters do these superhuman, supernatural things that I could not believe that I was reading or even watching on television. And ever since then, I've been hooked. I never forget the day I saw Superman on the big screen. It was during HBO free preview weekend. And that's the moment where I knew I became a nerd. And ever since then, I've been reading comics and enjoying my life ever since. Now, a lot of times, once someone views a movie or a show based on a comic book or the comic book material, They often want to explore more based on what they just watched. Keep in mind that just like traditional literature, the differences between the source material and film are subtle and substantial. It's a no-brainer that comic book readers are going to flock to movies and shows based on comic books. But a lot of times that Uno reverse card is played, and people who watch the on-screen media want to get involved in the source material. And if you're one to fall into that latter category, you've probably asked yourself, where do I start? Example, someone could say, I love Batman. Do I just go to a comic book store and grab what's on the shelf? Or do I go all the way back to Detective Comics number 27? Now, while neither is a horrible idea, there are ways to immerse yourself into the world of comics that are less frustrating and definitely less expensive. You don't want to just go into a comic book store not knowing what you're doing, not knowing what you're looking for, and finding familiar characters or whatever is hot that week, grabbing off the shelf, and then you're kind of lost because you probably picked up something in the middle of an arc to the end of the arc. You don't know what's going on, you know what you're reading. So before you grab your keys and your wallet and head to the comic book store, it's very important to know why you're leaving the house. You got to know what you're going to get. And to do that, you got to know what you like. The comic book industry has evolved so much over time that, if I'm honest, it's a lot to take in if you're new to comics. There are several styles and genres to pick from that are suited to your taste in storytelling. Let's go ahead and explore some of those real quickly. Now, before I go into those, does anyone have any questions so far? I could probably ramble on, but at this point, does anyone have any questions so far about what we discussed already? Nope. Cool. All right.
Keep going, Nix. Keep going, man.
Yeah.
We will trek on then. So, the most popular, of course, is the superhero comic book. Capes, cowls, tights, flights, and classic good versus evil that we all know and love. Superhero comics have been running at full speed ever since 1938 with Action Comics #1 and the debut of the greatest superhero of all time, Superman. Packed with action and adventure, the characters in these books have often been compared to those from Greek and Norse mythology. Hell, some of them actually are characters from Greek and Norse mythology. Most of the heroes and villains are pop culture icons today to those who don't even read comic books, from Spider-Man to Joker to Thanos. But there are always new characters being developed and even more lesser known ones getting revamped. It's also this type of book that is predominantly tearing up at the box office and your streaming service. Suggestions for books, I would say, would be Batman, Spider-Man, X-Men, Radiant Black. Those are all great picks as far as the superhero genre goes. Does anyone else have any suggestions for good superhero books?
Superheroes. Spider-Man was always my guy, and I think this belongs, but the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were always real important to me as well.
Yeah,
I think they're superheroes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're turtles who were mutated into ninjas, and they love pizza. It doesn't get any more fantastical than that. Absolutely. Humor comics have also been a staple in American literature. It's probably where we got the name comic book. The sole intention of these is to make you laugh. While some of the jokes inside can be an acquired taste, the books have always played a role in allowing us to not only laugh at the world, but also ourselves. The most popular, of course, is Mad Magazine, easily recognized from its logo and Alfred E. Newman, the book's mascot. Another example will be Cracked. That book has, God, I don't know if that book is even still in run anymore, but those are examples of humor comics that you can find on your shelves. Science fiction comics, much like the literary genre, are packed with tales and elements of applying actual science to a fictional world, concept, and characters, mostly involving space and even time travel. These comics have been given the stigma of being catered to the smart readers. A lot of other comic genres often cross into this lane. There are certain books like Fear Agent, Sex Criminals, and Descender. Excellent sci-fi stories. Does anyone else know of any other examples that they can think of or sci-fi books?
I would say Saga. Saga's pretty cool.
Mm. Saga crosses many lanes, I think.
It does.
Saga crosses, and then with Saga coming back now, okay, I'll move on because I don't want to get to that. Horror comics. Tales meant to frighten you. The stories can be amazing, but the star of this genre is the creepy, scary artwork. Panels inside these books are often nothing less than the stuff of nightmares. Like science fiction, horror can also often cross over with other comic book genres and categories. Suggestions would be Lock and Key, The Walking Dead, American Vampire. I think Saga can cross in there as well at sometimes, but with that.
Swamp Thing. That's my guy.
Yes. Oh my God, Swamp Thing is so good. Swamp Thing is, especially back in the 70s, Swamp Thing was really good. 70s and 80s, Swamp Thing was really good. The show that not the CW, it was DC Universe when they had their own premium streaming service, had a one season of Swamp Thing, and it was so good, and they canceled it. Don't know why to this day, but it was amazing. I'm hoping and praying they pick it back up one day. But of course, you can hope in one hand and in the other. So we'll see what happens there. Another genre that is often overlooked is the slice of life comics. Now, these are stories more so about real people going through real things set in the real world. Often these comics can be biographical, historical, romantic, or introspective. It's the genre for those who mainly enjoy fiction literature, but still crave comic book illustrations. Essex County is a good book. Brooklyn Dreams, Alex and Ada. Those are really good slice of life comic books that people can just read who really don't want all the flash and the bang of superheroes. They don't want the horror of horror books. They want something nice and subtle, a good story, but also that has illustrations and photos. And last but not least, we have to spotlight the Japanese comics known as manga. In the last 20 plus years, manga has become just as popular, if not more popular, than the superhero comic book. And just like the superhero books, this genre has reached great acclaim from its own on-screen adaptations in anime. What's cool about this genre is that it has its own subcategories as well. Shonen to shoujo, isekai to hentai, manga has something for everyone. Of course, some of the bigger titles, My Hero Academia, Attack on Titan, and One Piece. Does anyone else read manga?
Yes.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. Love manga. What are you reading now?
Nothing now.
Nothing now. What's your favorite?
We did
Corey,
we did like Dragon Ball for a while.
yeah, that's right. And then those ones that they make the comics of on TV that we liked so much. What was that?
I think that one was
I can't remember the name.
what was that? Oh, the we did some Ghibli.
That's what
ones
I
too,
like.
Yeah.
Yeah, loved it. It was great.
Yeah. So those ones are always pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, manga is amazing. If you can get past the initial shock of reading this way as opposed to this way, you're fine.
I think it's good for your brain. It feels like like you're working out. Like it
Yeah.
does something. I don't know what it is, but it does something to your brain.
You feel a little smarter reading manga. I get it. Another important thing to remember that is just as with every other entertainment industry, there is mainstream and there is also independent. Writers, artists, and even publishers had to start somewhere. Don't be afraid to take a risk on an unknown title, character, or creator, especially if it falls into the wheelhouse of your particular taste in comics. Some of my own personal favorites are Tuskegee Airs, Project New Wave. Even though it's under Image, Saga is still an independent comic. There are so many others that are great independent books. And on top of supporting those titles, you're also supporting someone's dream to have their book one day picked up by a major publication. So if you get a chance, always pick up an independent comic because you're probably going to discover the next great writer or great artist. Does anyone else have any picks from independent comics that they know of? Does anyone even have their own independent comics?
I will say, just offhand, Hampton Roads is a very it's an area with a lot of creative people. There are a lot of local comic creators and stuff in the area. If you do some searching, that there's a lot of different conventions in the area that if you ever go to a convention, check out the artist alley because there's a lot of like just local creators that are just doing their thing. One of them that I can think of off the top of my head, he has a comic called Delta Dogs. And that one is about a family of superheroes. They're all cousins and they all get superpowers. And it's a pretty nifty one. But yeah, definitely check out your local scene because sometimes you'll find some cool stuff in the area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Valiant has got a lot of good titles. I've read a number of good books off of Valiant. Dark Horse is another one that puts out some very original stuff.
Dark Horse for the last year has been killing it. And it's not even close to how they've been killing it. Image and Dark Horse. Because when the whole COVID thing happened, Diamond District, they kind of slacked on distributing comics. And that was the big one, pretty much distributing for Marvel and DC. So when Marvel and DC books were starting to lax in the shops, the other companies and even independents really stepped it up and started pushing their books out. And not only that, with everyone stuck at home, you had nothing to do but create. And just this past year in 2021, I have read some of the most amazing stories, and none of them have been Marvel or DC. None of them. Image, Dark Horse, IDW, Aftershock. They have been the most amazing publications putting out a great deal of stories, good stories too. And they're not dragging it out with these long arcs here. They're good 4-6 issues done. It's a wrap and it's a great book. So definitely give those independents and small companies a chance. Absolutely. So now that you got your palette in order, let's talk about those portions. Now, comic books are far removed from the golden age and silver age where your standard issue was at least a dime. Nowadays, a single issue can run you almost $9. Now, of course, that's on the high end. When you consider certain factors like it being a one-shot, that's a single issue arc, definitely a variant cover. Those who know what that is, that's a comic book cover that sometimes is drawn by a featured artist and or using a different grade of printing paper or finish. It can also be a crossover event. These are arcs where the story can take place in multiple comic books, often involving multiple characters from different comics. Or it's a limited series. Nowadays, a standard single issue comic can be anywhere between $1.99 to $4.99, depending upon where you buy it. Single issues are great if you have the patience and want to keep up with the current continuity of a book, or if a publisher decides to retcon certain elements of a story or just reboot everything. In that particular instance, you definitely want to stay what's going on and currently in the comic run. Now, if a new arc is starting that you want to get into, by all means, get it in while it's on the ground floor. But if you're just getting started, like some of you, I recommend picking up a few trade paperbacks, collected editions. These books collect at least one single arc collected into one book for the reader to enjoy in its entirety. Sometimes publishers will even include tie-in books. These are side stories that takes place during and outside of the main story. And they put these in the trades, giving the purchase more value. Does anyone often hit up comic book stores just to get the trades? Are you a more single issue, week to week, by week, month to month person?
I know for me, I am more of a trade person. I've generally with some comics, I'm less patient because they tend to drag the story out a little bit.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, I'm down with the trade paperbacks as well. I feel like you get a meatier bite of the story. It's a little bit more satisfying to see several issues play out than just kind of getting it on the drip.
Yeah.
But the single issue is still, I think, a great fan experience because you're waiting for it to come out, where the trade paperback is like one a year for an established title.
Yeah.
But with the single issues, like, oh, it's coming out.
Yeah.
And that's how it is with Saga right now. Love Saga. Saga is back, but I hadn't picked up that single issue yet because my whole Saga experience has just been the trade paperbacks. I don't know if I want to get into the single issue.
Ooh, that's I'll tell anyone if you pick up on a character or even a creator and you're starting to read a certain book and they're up to like volume 3 or 4 and now you're caught up to the current arc, you're in for a shock because you're going to read it and it's like, okay, well, when's the next one? My wife, prime example, she started to read I forgot what it's called, Homesick Pilots, and she read the first volume. And then when she finally caught to the current run, she's like, "Well, when's the next one? Is it tomorrow? Is it next week? Is it next Wednesday?" Like no, baby. These come out.
It's in October.
These come out either bi-weekly or monthly. You gotta wait a whole month. Like I gotta wait a whole month. I'm like yes, you have to wait that long. So again, some people don't have the patience for single issue, and I totally understand that. So if you're that kind of person, definitely get the trades. There's also a lot of trades that feature a lot of the older stories. You can get those usually in comic book stores for, depending upon the actual characters, they can be very, very inexpensive or they can be very expensive, especially if you get an omnibus, which is like collecting like at least like 5-6 different arcs in one huge book. So definitely watch what you're getting because you could spend a whole lot of money on something that could be this thick and even then still in the middle of an arc, because there's an arc that's very, very long in DC. It's from Batman. It's called No Man's Land. It's like a 5 trade arc, and each trade is like this thick. And if you get volume 3, you're kind of in the middle of it. You don't know what's going on. So definitely make sure you do your research before you go pick up the trades. But trades, to me personally, are definitely the way to go when you want to catch up on something that you're not familiar with. So some readers don't follow comics based on genre. Commonly, a reader is attached to a character or certain characters and follow any and all books they are involved in. Of course, the bigger acclaim the character is, the more books that they have for you on the shelf to follow with. Characters like Superman, Spider-Man, and Batman often keep at least 2 books in a current circulation, and they definitely have a deep catalog when it comes to trades. I think right now, Spider-Man has at least 3 books in circulation. Superman has 2. Batman has about 5 right now. So it really all depends upon if you following a character of which books you want to follow. Anyone have any favorite characters that they'll follow outside of the ones I just named?
I'm gonna have to gush about the X-Men.
Oh, okay.
I was a little hesitant at first, but I used to be really big into X-Men when I was a kid, but I stopped reading about 2 years ago or so. They relaunched their whole X-Men line with a new overarching theme, like all the mutants, the good ones, the bad ones, they all moved to this island. It's a living island, and they like made their own mutant country. So it's very weird. And when they relaunched, each book is like focusing on like a different aspect of like this new government that they've created. So it's very weird, but very fun. But uh, it's very interesting seeing different takes on like the same idea, I guess.
Yeah. What Corey's talking about is 2 years ago, there's a guy, I think his name is Alan Hickman.
Yeah. Um,
He
yeah.
relaunched X-Men in a way that has never been done before. It started out with House of X and then Powers of 10. Basically, he relaunched everything, and all mutants now live in this sovereign, it's almost like a pocket dimension almost, but it's still a real place on Earth called Krakoa. And it's ran by all Omega level mutants. And mainly it's two, Magneto and Professor Xavier. They have squashed their beef. They're working side by side to keep mutant kind alive and thriving. And it's amazing. But of course, there's always smoke.
If you like Game of Thrones, there's a lot of like that political intrigue part of it too, because like there's a lot of like mutants that are like doing their own thing in the background, like oh, you're not supposed to be that bad mutant. We warned them not to kill people or to experiment, but there they are doing experiments.
Yeah. And if you come in there with just your bad intentions, they drop you in a hole and they forget about you.
Yeah.
I still cannot believe they did that to Sabretooth. I was like, what?
Yeah. He's gone, at least for now. So.
Drop in the hole, forget about him. I'm like, okay. That works, I guess. Another element of comics that keeps readers coming back are the creators themselves. It's very easy to become a fan of a single writer or artist and desire to collect all of their work. It's the sense of security that invokes thought like, well, if their run with that book was amazing, I know this is going to be good. And there's less of a financial risk involved as well too. So you're not buying anything you're not too sure about. It's always fun to see your favorite creators work on a book involving one of your favorite characters. Case in point, right now, Tom Taylor, the guy who created and wrote the Injustice universe, which was amazing, he is currently right now writing my favorite Bat family member, Nightwing.
Oh, cool.
And he is killing it. So definitely it's good to see when your favorite writers is getting your favorite characters. Some of my other favorite writers, definitely Brian Michael Bendis, Mark Miller, Jeff Lemire, James Tinian. Oh man, I really could sit here all day. So someone stop me and just jump in. Jeff Johns. Who else? God, there's so many writers, and then artists as well too. Rest in peace to Michael Turner. He's one of my favorites. Of course, Jim Lee. I can't think of the other guy. He just started following me on Instagram. I can't think of his name now. Oops, sorry. But yeah, so many creators that when I see their name, especially in the writers, when I see their name, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll check it out because it's them. Does anyone else have favorite creators and comics they love to follow?
Well, I found Matt Fraction through Sex Criminals, which I thought was really creative and interesting. And then I see he's got this Hawkeye book, My Life as a Weapon, and I was like, oh, okay. I wonder what Matt Fraction's going to do with this, somewhat stodgy, old school Avenger superhero. He didn't even have any powers, okay? All you got is a bow and arrow. Hawkeye, My Life is a Weapon, I think is one of the best books Marvel has put out in the past 10 years-ish. Very creative. Just basically just defines the character. Introduces Kate Bishop, who's cool as hell. And the art that they chose to go with the storyline is very pared down and minimal and understated. It kind of, I think, calls to mind maybe like a newspaper comic strip almost. The way that it's just lines, kind of. Yeah. But anyway, it's just like, to your point, how I picked up this book because I read Matt Fraction in his current series. What does this back catalog look like? And that's how I found Hawkeye.
Yeah, My Life as a Weapon is definitely like top 25 of Marvel ever when it comes to their.
It's a really, really good book.
Yeah, it really is. Like it's not even like, when I'm not like, he and I aren't exaggerating. Like this, it's top 25 easily that Marvel has ever done. Anyone else have any favorite writers or artists?
I'm more. I do have a couple favorite writers, but I'm more of a visual. So I usually, if I see my favorite artist, I usually go for it. Like a big one for me, and he's got a lot of classics. Alex Ross. Like whenever you see like those painted covers, it's like, ooh, I've got it. Let me stop and see what that's going to be about. So just
Alex Ross, man.
Yeah.
That guy's a god.
There's Phil Jimenez. He did the art for
He's the one that started following me. Phil Jimenez.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, and he's got a new Wonder Woman Historia book that just came out. The art for that is insane. Like that guy, he can there's not many artists that like do crowd scenes the way that he does, and like it's just insane. Like when he does like crowds or like details, like it's just really impressive. Like I always enjoy his stuff.
Yeah, Phil is amazing. Absolutely. Yeah. He's the one I started following on Instagram because I featured one of his books one time and he was like, oh, let me give this guy a follow. I'm like, what? Stop.
It's always cool. It's always cool seeing them on Instagram too. So another oldie one that I was big into, Todd Knock. He did the art for Young Justice, and that was like written by Peter David. So in Peter David's stuff, his writing's very good usually, and they made such a good team doing like a teen superhero comedy comic. It was fun.
Yeah. Another one I really love because he's also not only a great artist but also a good writer, Todd McFarlane.
Mm-hmm.
Todd McFarlane is another GOAT to me because just with the everything that he's done with Spawn, and especially what he's doing now with Spawn, with the side books and this team, the Scorched. Todd McFarlane, man, such a great person when it comes to comics. Haven't had the pleasure of meeting him yet, but one day. So now that you guys are full-fledged comic book readers, or you at least have the knowledge to become one, you may want to start collecting. Readers from around the world keep dozens to hundreds to even thousands of comics bagged and boarded in safe, dry places to keep those prizes protected. Outside of buying weekly comics, going to collectible shops and comic book conventions are the best ways to grow your collection in quantity and quality. Outside of myself, who collects comics?
It's definitely
not more.
Not anymore?
No, I gave it up. It started taking up too much space. That's why I go to the public library.
That's true. If I'm on the fringes of it, and this is just another thing, like with the X-Men one, I was like not sure I wanted to jump into that new line, but after I checked out one from the library, I was like, you know what, maybe I will go ahead and just buy it. but it was a good way to like test the waters if you want to.
If I'm gonna buy the book, it's because I already have like a special relationship with that series. So the one that I'm really hooked on right now is on Image. It's called Monstress. And when a new Monstress comes out, like, I'm going to be there at my shop. I'm going to buy it the month it comes out, if not the week that it comes out. It's like a really big deal to me. But anything else, like, I'm just curious about when you're talking about House of M or something like that. I hadn't read that book, but I'm not going to go buy it just to have it. If I'm checking something out, I'll check it out at the library.
Right, right. Now, another aspect that you want to also remember is that comic books, the industry itself has also changed in the last few years as well too. While I hold the softest spot for your local comic book stores and also public library, sometimes you don't have the time to stop and go inside a brick and mortar shop, which is great. There are all kinds of comic apps out there on your smartphone and tablets that you can use to download comics, whether they be trades, old issues, or either what's going on currently right now. The go-to for me, Comixology. They always have what's current, what's going on right now, to old obscure things that you probably have never read or you would never ever find in a comic book store or anywhere else for that matter. So if you don't know what to look for in a comic book store, start by going to Comixology, take a look, take a browse, and then if you feel like going to the store, go. But if not, digital is also another way to go as well too.
So, Nix, is something like that a subscription service, or are you buying it per item?
Well, they have both options. I know with Comixology, they do have their Comixology Unlimited. Basically, they have a selection of books. It's a huge selection that you can borrow and read and then return, kind of like a library, and then read something else. Now, again, not everything on the app is available to read for free, but there's a whole lot. There are other applications like DC and Marvel have their own apps as well too, where everything on their app is absolutely free to read. But of course, it's a subscription fee that comes along with that. I think there's also an independent app as well too. I can't think of the name of it right now, but that one caters more toward independent comics, especially for those creators who want to, really push their products, so to speak, not only just in print, but also in digital as well. So yeah, there are options to just buy single issues and just purchase them on your own. But there are subscription services for those who like to read something all the time.
I will say, I think the one small independent app that I've heard about is Black Sands. It's one that's it was created by an African American comic creator, and it's I believe it's predominantly features creators of color on it, and stories featuring characters of color, which is pretty cool. All sorts of different like manga inspired sci-fi, fantasy, horror. But that's one of like the indie ones. There's another one, but I don't remember what that one is called. But also there's library apps too. So like we at Suffolk have Hoopla, which does have a good mix of some stuff up there.
Yeah. And Black Sands is a dope thing too, is because they recently, the creator of that was recently featured on Shark Tank, I think it was.
Yeah.
He got a huge funding from that show, and I cannot wait to see what comes next from Black Sands Entertainment. The comics are great. I read a few, got a few of the issues, apps downloaded on my own tablet right here, and yeah, it's definitely awesome thing that's going on with them. But that's all I have for you guys. If you guys have any questions or suggestions, if you guys want me to suggest things to you, floor is all open and I'm all yours.
Well, Nix, it's Black History Month, and we've been talking about Black and Super meaning Black characters, but also Black creators. You want to give some shout outs to some of the legendary superheroes and creators of color?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the creators. Dennis Cowan and definitely the guys over at Milestone. All of their characters are of color. For those who don't know what Milestone is, that's the imprint that comes out of DC with Dennis Cowan, Dwayne McDuffie, Robert Washington, John Leon. They have an amazing roster of characters from Static. You guys may know Static Shock, Icon, Rocket, Hardware, the Blood Syndicate. Amazing stuff they have going over there at Milestone. Definitely want to shout out the current writer right now of Static, Vita Ayala. They are doing amazing things at Milestone now with this new season 1 revamp. Definitely awesome there. Also want to shout out Marcus Williams and Greg Burnham. They are the tag team that work on the book called Tuskegee Heirs. Also a great book as well. I think they're in issue number 4 right now. You may catch me on local con somewhere. They're out of Atlanta, Georgia. So I think they're gonna be at Tidewater Comic Con this year. I don't know. I hope they show up because that'd be a great thing to get more issues out of them. And as far as other characters go, I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, Black Lightning, Black Panther, Storm, Sheesh, Bishop. Um, God, there's so many. Blue Marvel, Misty Knight, Luke Cage, just so many great characters of color that are out there for Black history, and definitely repping it with the sometimes I think OP skill set of powers.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of just to bounce it out a little bit. Like, okay, well, yeah, they're disenfranchised in the real world. Let's give them like the most OP power we can give them. I'm like, oh yeah, that guy, let's make him a king and ruler of a whole nation where the entire world wants what they have. Yeah, let's do that for him.
There's definitely a lot. There's definitely a lot. One that I recently started reading again was Moon Girl. That was a fun series.
Yeah,
that's a really great character. The one I remember growing up that was always closest to my heart was Sunspot from the New Mutants.
Yeah,
who was Afro-Brazilian. He was kind of like a baby Hulk. He's like a solar-powered mini Hulk.
Yeah, I think Sunspot right now is on a team of X-Men called the Secret X-Men. Number 1 actually came out last week, and they're protecting Princess Leandra from the Shi'ar Empire. I think he's part of that team.
Oh.
So yeah,
Sunspot's on it. Secret X-Men.
Yeah, Secret X-Men. I think he is in that team.
I'm gonna have to look for him.
Yeah, so that's another one on the ground floor. If you can catch one number 1, definitely catch it number 1.
All right, this is bringing us back to the single issue trade paperback question that we started with.
Yeah, definitely. Single issues are good, but if you had the patience, I'll wait for the trade, because that's what I usually do myself. I'll read the number 1, number 2. If I see it kind of dwindling a little bit, like, okay, I'll catch the trade when it comes out in about a month or 2. Any question for anyone else? I am all yours.
I was gonna say, I was gonna ask, like for younger kids, do you have any like comic recommendations, or like is there any like that like stick out to you? I know like your library, one of the big popular kid comics that we have is Cleopatra in Space. Like that was like really big for a while there, and I know they just made like a Netflix adaptation of that one, but like that was
really
a popular kids comic.
Yeah, believe it or not, the Sonic comic out of IDW is really good.
I've heard some about that. I haven't read it, but I heard the art looks pretty good. So
Yeah, like I'm surprised. I read a couple of issues one time. I'm like, whoa, this is actually really good, and it's catered towards kids. Like it's clearly catered towards kids the way it's written. It's clearly for kids, but it's still really good. So yeah, that's a good one. As far as kids go, anything involving a Scooby Doo team up is good as well too. Scooby Doo's always teaming up with somebody.
he's always up to something. Like I did see like in passing there was a what was it? I think a Scooby Batman comic. Like
Yeah, Scooby is teamed up.
Scooby
And-
Apocalypse. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Scooby's actually teamed up with WWE wrestlers before. That was a good one. Yeah, anything like that. Also, the bigger companies like Marvel and DC will sometimes put out these abridged versions of popular stories. Like I know my son, when he was around 7 or 6, we bought him this abridged version of Miles Morales' origin story. They totally cut the part where Peter died, and they just talked about how he became Spider-Man and really, became his own hero. And eventually, they crossed Spider-Verse. He met Peter. But yeah, it's very interesting to see when they take their books and their characters, and I wouldn't say water them down, but definitely make them more kid friendly. I had no idea it was possible, and even me hearing it out loud, I'm like, maybe don't do that. But somehow Marvel found a way to make Deadpool kid friendly, and I still to this day don't know how they did that, but it worked. And there's always a kid friendly version of some comic out there, the familiar character that kids have seen in TV or movies or even in other comics that their parents or other big brothers have collected themselves. If you can find a more subtle manga for kids, that's always a good thing to do as well too. Uh, Kids nowadays love to read manga, especially the ones that are actually geared and centered toward the anime they're currently watching now, whether it be the My Hero Academia or what's another good one? Fire Force is the one that kids are into now. Of course, Dragon Ball Z, they're into that. Demon Slayer is another one they're into. It's just so many great mangas out there that even kids can get into, and I think it's a wonderful thing. Anybody else? Okay.
Well, I do want to thank you for coming tonight, Nick, and chatting with us about comics. I always enjoy talking about comics, so I'm glad I had this excuse to do it on the clock.
Yeah, man, it's always a good idea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome so much. If you guys ever are not doing anything on Wednesday nights, I'm a part of a live sale that happens with Atlantis Comics. They have locations in Norfolk and in Portsmouth. Every Wednesday night at 7, myself and another fellow content creator who lives in the area, Navy Montel, he and I hop on there during the live sale, and we just sell comics, have giveaways, certain deals, certain bundles. So if you guys are interested and you want to see some good stuff and you don't know what's going on this week, hop in, see us act completely silly, and talk about comics the whole time as well too. So check that out if you guys get a chance. It's live on their Facebook, so Atlantis Comics Facebook channel, 7 o'clock every Wednesday. Check us out.
Cool. Well, thanks again for tuning in. This will be posted up on our website, so for those that couldn't make it, they'll get to see it recorded. And this time it will be it will be pretty immediate. And the last time it wasn't. But yeah.
Where's the Zoom that we did it this time? Where is it?
And Corey, when you make that YouTube post, in the description, put a link to the Black and Super Quiz Challenge.
That's true. We do have a quiz for Black and Super, like Matt mentioned. So definitely go down there in the link and try your hand at some superhero trivia for Black and Super, and you'll be entered in a raffle for a fun prize. So yeah,
no cheating.
Yeah,
you can play with your friends, but don't Google the answers. Okay.
I am the Google.
Well, thanks again. Y'all have a good evening, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thanks, Nix.
No problem. Thanks, guys, for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.